Martin. We here at Fall River Government Television sincerely hope that you and your family are healthy and safe, and you found new coping methods as we navigate these highly stressful times. Mayor Paul Coogan has requested broadcast of this virtual town hall, which is also attended by State Representative Schmidt and State Representative Fiola and State Representative Sylvia and Senator Michael Rodrigues. Thank you for being here. We want to, of course, mention that we are practicing social distancing. Everyone's 6 feet apart, be in front of and behind the camera, and we all have our masks available. Mayor Coogan has asked, too, that we give a couple of minutes in the beginning. We really just want to hear from the folks behind the scenes and the email questions that we have received from residents. We will get to as many questions as possible. But Mayor Coogan, you asked that we give our representatives and Senator and yourself a chance to have a few minutes just to explain what you've seen about around the city, what people have said that is of top concern, and how you're helping out.
Yeah, I first of all, I have to thank the legislative delegation, whether it's on a Zoom meeting with Michael Rodrigues or working with Alan Sylvia on a project in the South End, or Carol or Paul Schmidt, and any one of these representatives has always consistently stepped up and put Fall River first, and it makes the job so much better, because this is not a one-person job. When you're in something like this, we have to all pull the boat the same way, and all of our representatives have been right there for everything we ask. Now, we don't always get the answer you want, but they're right there to give you an answer, and that's all you can ask in times like this. I think it's important that we show the citizens of Fall River that this is a team effort, whether it's the state, federal, or local delegation with our city council, who's also been there right from day one helping us. It's very, very important. And Fall River is continuing to move forward. We have a lot of good initiatives going, along with the help they're giving us, whether it was our rollout this weekend working with Bay Coast Bank so we could minimize traffic in the building, so people could use cash to pay bills. We got in a lot more money than I thought we would, and I'm glad to see the public stepping up and doing that. We still have a drop box up here so people can come in. I don't think you'll see the building open until the very start of phase 2. But we're answering phones all day long and well into the evening to make sure people know what's available and what we can help them with. They'll see a number of things being rolled out shortly, whether it's basketball hoops on the 8th, pickup of bulky items, the CARES Act, which gave us a ton of money, and working specifically with Senator Rodrigues on that over last week and the weekend, trying to find the best way to utilize that money to help the city.
Okay.
That would be my message. It's a team effort, and we are working together.
And Mayor Coogan, I want to make note that you did give us permission prior to us going on air to send out the number to your office. It's 508-324-2600, or folks can email you to at mayor@fallriverma.org. Okay, Representative Schmidt, what about your thoughts? What are we saying at the state level, the legislation that maybe will get kids back to school, transportation problems?
Well, thank you very much, and I just want to thank the mayor for organizing this and for his kind remarks about the delegation. It's true, Mayor, we do work as a team, but every team needs a leader, and right now we're so fortunate in the leadership that Fall River has. Thank you for unwavering. By the way, I thought that your leadership reflected itself in the faces we saw yesterday as we rolled through Fall River on our Memorial Day rolling event. I saw so many people standing up, and they were recognizing all those who gave everything they had, but I think they were also speaking for Fall River. And I think they were saying, you know what, folks, we're going to get through this. So I just want to tip my hat to Fall River's leadership and to the spirit that was so evident yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. And Representative Carol Fiola, same thing. What are we seeing at the state level? I was speaking with you before the program kicked off this evening, and you said the phone is just nonstop. Yeah. So give us the maybe top problem that you're hearing from your constituents.
Well, thank you. And again, I appreciate my colleagues' comments to the mayor. It's been a great working relationship with the mayor, with our senator, and of course with the delegation. Since approximately March 20th, 23rd, when the state pretty much shut down, and it's been 2 months. And I have to say how proud I am of the residents of this community, because whenever I have gone out, which is for essential issues or, I've seen people being kind, people being patient, and people staying home, which is what has been asked of them as a rule. So I think our community has responded gallantly, and of course, it's also been reflective in our numbers. While our numbers have creeped a little bit, we were a little later than other communities in getting some deaths and more cases. You see the numbers coming down, you see them very steadily coming down, and they were not as high as many other communities. And again, that's a testament to everyone here, the Board of Health and the hospitals, and of course our mayor. We have fielded phone calls from that day forward. Of course, in the beginning, it was primarily unemployment. It was incredible, the number of people that I'm sure I know every one of our offices had to help get through the system, because of course Massachusetts unemployment was at an all-time low, and when this broke, we have a complete flip, and we have one of the highest unemployment rates in history. And so we would see those calls, and we fielded those. The state ramped up from about 50 people to their call center, to over 1,000. That's how, and they had to train them and to get quick answers. And so I commend really the State Unemployment Office for their work as well. They've been great partners in helping our constituents. And so right now, pretty much all of our constituents, at least mine right now, with an exception here and there, have been well addressed in their needs. And of course, in Fall River, with the extra $600 through the CARES Act, that has really helped our residents supplement their unemployment. So they're in a good holding pattern right now, and we have to move beyond that. And that's what we're collectively doing on the state level, and of course with our federal partners trying to get us to understand where our numbers are going to be, and then move on from there.
And we will get on to specific questions that have come in from our viewers as we move along. So Representative Sylvia, you and I were talking earlier as well. Concerns for the elder population, right? That's where we've seen, sadly, the most illness, the most loss of life. What do you want to say to the elders who have, the depression rates for elders and those in isolation are really frightening?
Sure, of course. Again, I want to echo the words of our mayor and working with the delegation. Working with Mayor Coogan has been very important as we look at the trend in numbers. And of course, we look at the elder population, and we have to consider the fact that the vast majority of positive cases, vast majority of hospitalization, and vast majority of deaths, those over the age of 80.
Yeah.
Age 65 and above are the most vulnerable. And what people must understand is that hasn't changed. Although our weather is better, it's warmer. If you noticed this past weekend, people were out and about, but they should not let their guard down for a moment, because the deadliness of this virus is as deadly as it was 5 weeks ago. And it's important that they maintain those same efforts that we've all talked about and heard about washing our hands and about wearing a mask and social distancing. So very important as we continue, if we want to see those numbers to continue to decrease. And, I think as we go on, we're going to see little spikes, as we have seen even here in Fall River. Numbers go up, and they go from 16 to 23, and 23 to 32, and back to 16. We have to ensure by the work that we all do in the community that those numbers continue to trend downward.
Right.
They are in other areas, especially in hospitalization and in death, but I think that's going to be very important. The nursing home issue is probably the most serious issue, and many of the calls I receive are people who are in nursing, their families in nursing home. Of course, they have little contact, they can't visit. They're dependent on phone calls or FaceTime by another employee at the nursing home. We're just now getting squared away with testing of those nursing home attendants, CNAs in nursing homes and staff, where they're going to be tested weekly. And one of the reasons why those numbers have been sky high in nursing homes. So this is where the Commonwealth is going to be putting a lot of its efforts as we move forward.
Well, let's hear from Senator Rodrick on that. Thank you.
Thank
for the
you.
program. Yeah, it's good to see you. It's been a little bit
thank
since
you,
we've been
Pam.
out in the community. So, Senator, tell us about some of the state legislation, and if you could, would you touch on the legislation as far as House and Senate talking about mail-in voting? All concerned
Certainly.
about that. We were talking about it earlier with the mayor, how we can make this work, make it work effectively, if indeed it comes to that, and how will that decision be made?
Certainly, certainly. First of all, thank you, Pam, and to Fall River Government TV for providing us with this opportunity to speak directly to our constituents. And no, I haven't been in the community much lately because I'm at the State House every day.
Yeah.
It's a skeleton crew, but with my responsibility as Chair of Ways and Means, I have to be there for each and every session. And we had session today, and as a matter of fact, I had a big conference call today about mail-in voting. Mail-in voting is nothing new. We have been doing absentee ballots for a long time. All of our soldiers, the men and women who serve in our armed services, of course have the opportunity and the ability to vote, and they vote by absentee ballot, mail-in voting. We have very strict rules in our Constitution about who can take advantage of absentee voting. So we cannot change our Constitution, but we can amend the laws to make it easier for those residents who want to exercise the most important right as being an American, the right to vote, but are afraid to leave their house to go to a polling place to cast that vote. Thinking about the poll workers, the employees that are there, it's a very hands-on, you know, they're checking paper, they're speaking to individuals. Many of them tend to be older, retired individuals who are very, very highly susceptible to the virus. It can happen. As a matter of fact, just this past Tuesday, a week ago today, right? Today's Tuesday?
Today's
I don't even know what
Tuesday.
day it is. A week ago today, we had 2 special elections in the Massachusetts State Senate, one in Plymouth and one out in central Western Mass in Westfield. In the Plymouth election, 44% of the votes cast were done by absentee ballots, by mail-in voting. It has worked. It can work. We are going to expand it. We want to ensure that every resident of Massachusetts has the ability to safely and confidentially vote come September and November.
Okay. I think number one, what I hear too is safely returning to school, Mayor. I know that those decisions will be made more at the state level, but what have y'all been hearing at the state level? How can we transport these children safely? Is it every other seat? Is it staggered school times, distancing in desks? And I really think about the younger population where show and tell and lunchtime and gym time and recess are just so hands-on. Might have a very different look in September, right?
Oh, absolutely. All the things you just described are easily doable if it wasn't for the cost.
Right.
Those
right.
costs are going to pile up so quickly on both the state and the city that it might not be workable. But of course, safety is job number one for the kids. I've been hearing a number of discussions about which way we're going to go. I do not think it's finalized yet, but I can assure you I was at the administration building Friday with the superintendent, Kenny Pacheco, who takes care of transportation, looking at a number of options.
Yeah.
But I think the first thing we have to do before we do anything is get the budget straightened out, and then we'll worry about protecting every kid, because, again, how school's going to look in September, no one predicted how it would look right now, so we'll work our way to it. I do know that the parents I know that are home, they want the kids back in school, and they want the kids safe. That's what they're talking about, safety
Right.
and back in school.
Rep. Viola, anything? What have you been hearing
Well-
from parents of young children in your neighborhood?
Well, first of all, I want to give a big shout out and kudos to our educators out there, because I
yeah.
think parents who are watching, or grandparents or family members who are now at home with their children, trying to get through and navigate this new educational remote learning are realizing, wow, this is not, I'm sure they always appreciated our teachers and our educators, but this is really showing them how difficult it can be. Just today, I know our K through 12 group at the state level have been meeting and talking about just what is this going to look like in a series of meetings, and that's ongoing right now. I think what I hear, and the senator's got a little closer ear to the ground at times in his role as chair of Ways and Means, but I know they're hoping by the end of June to have some further guidance to our K through 12 systems to talk about this hybrid perhaps, or how we're going to get our kids in the classroom. K through 12, in particular elementary school, having that socialization as a parent,
Right.
as someone who talks to educators every day, as a mom, I know how important that is, and that isolation has been very hard on the children. So I think there is a goal at the state level to figure out how we can get kids back to school. But as the mayor pointed out, we've got fiscal issues that we don't even understand yet because all the revenue numbers aren't in for the remainder of the year. Projections, what is the federal government going to give us as well? So that's all being discussed, along with various types of scenarios for how we get our kids in school. And we've heard the same thing all of you have been talking about out there. Is it going to be, you can't have 26 kids in the classroom? Are you going to be using gym space? Are you going to be eating in your class? So I give our DESE, Department of Early and Secondary Education, they're working on this now. We'll hear more, but I think I would say every one of us here want to see our kids somehow get back to school. Their families need to be at work. Child care is a huge issue. This is a big issue, and so it's being worked on.
Okay, Representative Schmidt, you have some thoughts on that? The bookend population, right? These kids, it's scary suddenly seeing you're in the grocery store with mom or at the park, people are wearing masks, right? What are your thoughts on getting these young people back into the classroom?
Well, I have a neighbor who teaches physics at Durfee,
Wow.
and I talk with him a lot about the challenges that he's had this spring. The kids who are motivated, the students whose parents are there with them, the students who are doing well, he hears from them all the time. The students who he never was able to reach in the classroom, the students whose parents are not as committed to their education, the students whose parents are working 3 jobs, he's found it very difficult to reach them. And I know that the challenge that our mayor and that our school committee will be looking at is how the heck do you reach the students at a time when maybe we're not all back in the classroom at the same time. And we're just going to need a lot of really good thinking about it so that we don't lose a whole cohort of kids.
Right.
And we all know, we've been talking about this for years, that education is the key to economic development. An educated workforce is fundamental to Fall River's future. And now we have an pandemic that has kept the kids out of school.
Representative Schmidt, I think if I can just for 1 minute, the population you talked about, the kids that are kind of on the fence, right? That kid that was so close to graduation, the kid that was saying, wow, I'm finally there. I see the light at the end of the tunnel, right? Representative Sylvia, we're going to move over to you. Those are the students that I particularly worry about. Like you said, the high achievers, they'll get through.
Yep.
But those kids that you were counting the days down on the calendar to get these students to finish in this way in 3 weeks, how do we do that?
So very difficult, because none of us expected this, of course.
Right.
And just an example, remote learning. We started hearing lots about remote learning. This is where teachers communicate, and I'm sure that Rep. Schmidt was talking about his neighbor who's communicating with students online, and that works great with students in the situation that Rep. Schmidt mentioned, where parents are involved, parents know them, some of the material can help them with their homework. Unfortunately, in gateway communities like Fall River, and in my district, because I hear this, students are having a difficult time because they don't have the parent that is there to say, you need to get your homework done. And so that motivation isn't as high as it would be in other communities. That's a problem. So remote learning hasn't been what some would like it to be because, and we have so many other issues when we talk about schools. We need, you know, we often forget because many listening eat.
Right.
Nutrition. Many of the children in gateway communities are not getting the same nutrition that they were getting when they were in school. Those issues add to the importance of getting our children back to school. So, you know, you have this two-edged sword with a deadly virus and getting back to school. Getting back to school for children, when we talk K or even pre-K to high school, 12, that is on the lowest scale affected by this virus. So few of them have had a negative effect with this virus. Of course, they're sick. Problem is, of course, they're carriers. Some are asymptomatic, carry that virus home to elder family members. But it's very important that we open our schools. One of the other things, and being the Vice Chair of Public Safety, we know that there's a lower number reported of child abuse. That doesn't mean that there's less child abuse. There's probably more child abuse. But it's not being reported because those avenues and methods of reporting to our police, to school guidance counselors,
Let's
no
hold
contact.
off on that for a minute, Representative, because that's a whole separate question.
Absolutely.
I've talked with the executive director over at Children's Advocacy Center, and her reports that she's hearing have dropped by 50% or more because these students don't have contact with their coaches, with their teachers, with their daycare providers, which really are our frontline reporters. But Senator Rodrick, you mentioned the commute every day to Boston. I imagine it's lighter, which may be a good thing, but one of our email questions came from someone that is concerned about eventually returning to their job in Boston, about being sure that they're safe on the subway, being safe on their rail station that they use. How can you ensure that, and what is that going to look like again when we do operate at somewhat near full capacity?
It's going to be interesting. Right now, I can make it from here to my office at the State House in less than an hour, 58 minutes.
Yep.
Half the time, yeah, I see my colleagues smiling. You know, you just fly up there and you fly home, unlike anything in my 25 years driving back and forth. But already this week, I see an uptick in traffic, so traffic is already ticking up. I know Mayor Marty Walsh from Boston very, very well. We served together in the House of Representatives. He's a good friend. He's very committed to his city and to the safety of his constituents and to the safety of those visiting Boston. So you can be assured that he's not going to open up his city too quickly, and it's going to be done right, and he's going to enforce the rules. You know, the T is it's another story. I mean, that is just a breeding ground of the virus where you have high congestion of individuals leaning and touching each other, breathing on each other, holding on to different rails, handrails, and I am sure and I know they're going to do the best job they can at disinfecting the cars as often as possible. But what I'm concerned about is that once Boston does open up again, that the congestion that we saw just 3 months ago in and around Boston is going to get even worse because less people are going to want to take the T in public transportation because more people are going to feel unsafe on public transportation. And I was talking to my colleague, Senator Joe Boncore, who represents the north end of Boston. Of course, it's restaurant capital of the state of Massachusetts. There's 90 liquor licenses and restaurants just on Hanover Street in the north end of Boston. And Mayor Walsh is talking about closing all the streets to the north end down to vehicular traffic, just to allow pedestrians to allow their restaurants to socially distance at a greater, more table availabilities, to go onto the sidewalks, onto the roads, in the curbside with tables, maintaining the recommendations by the CDC, to try to give these businesses an opportunity to recoup some of the losses that they've experienced over the last 2 months. So Boston, I think, will be open for business, will be open for people to work there, for people to go and enjoy as best they can within the next couple of months, but it's going to be done at a very safe pace.
Right. Touching on that, Mayor Coogan, the public transportation, as I see the buses in the city, they do say, emergency rides only, mandatory, important rides only, please restrict driving, no more kind of getting on the buses and just heading along quickly. But what are we doing to ensure that these buses and taxis are clean, are safe for our people who need public transportation?
Well, I believe Southeastern Regional Transportation just got a tremendous grant from the CARES Act.
Yep.
Of $21 million, and obviously that'll take care of the whole South Coast. I know they're doing additional cleaning and fogging of the buses. I can't really talk to the taxis. I'm not sure of that. The buses have been free for a while, so they were finding people that were just jumping on them to take a ride. They weren't using them to go from A to B. They were just getting around and taking a drive around, go to New Bedford and come back. But I believe they're doing a good job with the buses. I think they'll keep them clean. I haven't heard of a case coming off of a bus in Fall River, which is what we want. We do want to improve our transportation system, and with some of that money, we're looking at some increased ridership and some increased routes. We'll see how it plays out.
Okay. Representative Viola, people again have expressed concerns, as the senator mentioned, holding onto the rails, getting on and off the buses. What have you seen?
That's a huge challenge, and as I said, we have to figure out ways to ensure that people feel comfortable, right? Using this transportation again. Every business that is open right now, essential, and now phase 1, which just opened yesterday. I don't even know what day it is, it seems, anymore, but that phase 1 where retailers for curbside, or every business has guidelines that they need to be following, too. It's a lot of personal responsibility in this whole virus, right? We had to do the behavior changes. It was up to each one of us to do the hand washing. That was the only thing we can do. That's the only thing we can do, is change our behaviors for this virus, right? There's no vaccine, So employers, that's a big issue. They have had to ensure, over the last month in particular, started to think about what are they going to do. They have to ensure there's hand washing in there. They have to ensure masks for their employees. They have to ensure sanitizing and training of their employees. And these are the things that are required of them. And most that I hear from are very happy to be doing these things. And so I think these are going to be some of the new normals that people are going to be used to. When you go out, you're going to be more conscious, more aware. The businesses are going to be more on top of these things once we open up a little bit more. But yeah, these are real concerns that people have. Interesting last note I want to say on this is, in terms of the masks, we all know we've got to wear them when we cannot social distance, or when we are in a particular business or food shopping or other stores. People are very good about it. People are excellent about it. I also see people in their car by themselves wearing a mask. And I bring that up because so many people have said to me, oh, gee, they saw Paul in a car with his mask on, and you don't need to do that. You may keep it because you might forget to take it off.
So kind of becoming habit, which
it becomes a habit, which is kind of interesting too. But you need a mask. But like I said, we're social distancing right now. And so we're trying to be as safe as possible. And I know the mayor and his custodial crew here, when we're done here, they're going to make sure these tables are clean. And these are the things that we're doing. So yes, to answer your original question, we have to do the things that will restore confidence in the right steps. And that data is going to draw us, how the numbers are going, what's happening, because we don't want to go back.
They wear the mask, though, They wear the mask in Westport because of the cow manure. So they've been doing that. They've been doing that for some time.
Representative
We
Schmidt,
got used to that, Representative Sylvia. Yeah.
Representative Schmidt, you're a huge proponent of open spaces for fresh, clean air, right? But what are
Now
you
we
doing?
see how important
Now
they
you
are.
see how important it is. So what are you doing when you come to Fall River and you see that congestion? It is amazing, though, when you travel through the city, how quiet it's been. But what are you seeing to ensure that our public transportation does indeed stay safe?
Yeah, and of course, it is so important that people have the confidence in our public transportation, that they feel that they can get on that bus.
Right.
Because for so many of our citizens in Fall River, the bus is the way they get to work. The bus is the way they get to school. And so it's just an essential part of this recovery that we're in. And I'd just like to recognize that the bus drivers for the past,
Sure.
what is it now? Is it 2.5 months already?
Couple of
as-
months,
2 months.
Well-
As Rep. Viola said, we don't know what day it is, but the last 2.5 months, the bus drivers have been front-line workers in this battle against the pandemic. Think of how every person who gets on a bus, that bus driver doesn't know whether they're positive or negative, but those bus drivers stayed at their jobs, they did their job, and we should recognize that they, along with our healthcare workers, along with the folks at Dunkin' Donuts, they've really been part of the frontline troops who have gotten us through this, and I don't have a hat on, but I'm tipping it.
Absolutely.
There you are.
I agree with you. I shop at Market Basket in the South End, and
Yeah.
amazing the number of teenage employees who are just so dedicated, checking you in and out, reminding you about the mask, sterilizing the carts. So yes, hats off to those young people.
They're
who
putting
do that.
themselves at
They
risk
really are.
every day.
Yep. Representative Sylvia, let's get back to that question about the students that we're not seeing, right? There are some teachers in the special ed department that I've talked with that said they're sending SROs, the school resource officers, out to knock on doors to find out where some of these children are. It's almost as if they've dropped off. Perhaps the parents have taken them off to areas that they feel safer. But what are we doing to ensure that young people are safe now that those first responders are no longer there, the teachers, the coaches, and the daycare providers?
So if you look at the agencies who received those reports, like the Child Advocacy Center and the District Attorney's Office and our police, there's always a drop during school vacations
Yeah.
where that contact isn't made. So we're seeing that now, obviously, because there is no contact. So fewer reporting, but I think it's important for people in the community to make a report if they see something that's unusual with a child, a situation that doesn't look like, it gives the appearance that there's something wrong with a child, or a child may say something to another child, to at least send a social service agency, the police there, to check on that child, to be sure that that child is okay, especially if you go a long period of time in a neighborhood without seeing someone. Weeks. I think it's important to do a safety check on a home where there's no contact. In some cases, I know the school department is doing that when they realize that there's
They
no
are, yes.
contact as a result of
Yep.
remote learning. They'll send someone to the home to check on the child. We'll definitely see an increase in the numbers of child abuse and sexual abuse when things get back to the new normal. I say the new normal, and we look at those dates of now. Yesterday was the 25th, phase 2, the 8th, the new normal. 30 days after that, the 29th. But people should keep in mind that those are dates. They're not struck in stone. Those dates are dependent on, and the governor makes those decisions along with public health groups that he has accessible to him. Today he gave a report about some of that, and those openings and those dates of those phases are going to be dependent on the matrix and the data, the numbers of positive cases, of hospitalization, of deaths as a result of COVID. So those numbers are not struck in stone. That June 8th can easily become June 15th, and that June 20th could easily become July 10th.
Well, we've seen that we have to remain flexible, helpful, and it is fluid, right? These
Absolutely.
numbers. Senator
Pam.
Rodrick, I want to ask about the state aid that Fall River is receiving, will hopefully receive additional aid. What are we doing to ensure that here in Fall River we receive our fair maximum?
We are going to do the best job we can for what's called local aid. And there's two main buckets of local aid that every community receives. One we call UGGA, UGGA, Unrestricted General Government Aid, and that's just a check that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts presents to a community. It used to be lottery aid, quote unquote, because the original source of that money was from the state lottery, but we've since have supplemented it to such a degree that we call it UGGA. The second, of course, is Chapter 70, is the support that the state provides our local communities for the support of their K-12 school system. Fall River, like all gateway cities, are very heavily reliant on state aid in the compilation of their budget. And we're very much concerned. We know what happened the last time we faced a recession, which was back in 2009 and 2010. Halfway through FY09, at the time it was Governor Patrick. Governor Patrick instituted 9 C cuts. We can remember what happened here in Fall River: layoffs of firefighters, layoffs of police officers, pink slips that throughout municipal government. And we cut, on top of that, local aid was cut by close to 30%. It's a real possibility that could happen again. The Commonwealth, unlike the federal government, where they just passed a $3 trillion CARES Act, how do they pay for it? They fire up the printing presses and they print money. We can't do that. We have a balanced budget on the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We can only spend what we bring in. The good news is that we've had a few very good years fiscally over the last few years, and we were very disciplined when we were bringing in lots of money, that we socked that money away into our so-called rainy day account or stabilization fund. But even with the healthy rainy day stabilization fund, even with hopefully some additional federal help and federal participation, there's still going to have to be a number of cuts throughout state government, and also we'll be looking at other revenue sources.
Sure.
Nobody wants to talk about taxes,
Sure.
but there's only 3 ways to balance the budget. You raise taxes, you cut expenses, or you dip into your savings. And we'll have a 4th this year with federal participation, but I would think that all 4 tools will be utilized to ensure that too much of a burden is not placed on one particular area.
Okay.
And while even amongst this delegation, we all have particular interests in the government and in the state budget that we pay very close attention to. One thing we all share, not only here in the Fall River delegation, but with every delegation around the state, is we all share local communities back home. I have 7 communities I represent in the Senate, and every one of them are heavily reliant upon local
matters
aid.
to you. Representative Fiola, where do we make cuts? What goes?
Well, that's going to be dependent upon what we see with revenue
Yeah.
forecasts coming in. We've postponed. We just finalized all that last week. Postponed where people are paying their income tax to the state. We postponed that till July 15th. So that whole revenue stream has been shifted. So in the next couple of months, we'll know more. And as the senator said, we're waiting to see what the federal government's going to do. Are they going to print some more money for us? And as the mayor has repeatedly stressed to us and to the federal delegation, we need to remove some of the strings to the money that the federal government has been giving us for the CARES Act, because we have some operating needs here that must go forward that without the other revenue, we need that money. And so if we're only allowed to use it for very specific reasons to do with COVID, we're missing something very important, and that's that replacement of that important revenue. And before you jump, I just wanted to pick up on something, because you were talking about child abuse a minute ago, and how how there's a whole missing group of people and stakeholders and overseers and teachers that look for these signs. And in an urban community, in every urban community, we see these violations, but you know, you have 51As, Section 35s for mental health and drug addiction. Those are still going on. 51As, which is domestic violence, you know, it looked really good in the beginning of this epidemic and this pandemic. Was wow, you know, the numbers are down. But that was a very deceiving number as well, because things are happening. Everybody's home. Tensions are high. The children are home. You know, if you were in poverty before, you certainly were in poverty now. So there's been a lot of stressors on people. Sure. And the 51As, domestic violence, we've been really working. The Speaker of the House on our branch has worked very hard in the last couple of months, working with us to ensure that we're communicating to the public where they can get that help. And here we have a STAR domestic violence hotline here. Our courts are closed right now for general public and trials. However, you can walk in that lobby at any time and get the paperwork you need to file this against domestic violence, a 51A or a Section 35. So people may think they can't, but yes, they can, and all they need to do still is call the police from wherever they are safe, and those, the judge is on duty 24/7. So I just really wanted to make that point, because like the children, it's something we're not seeing and hearing more about. People would go to their hairdresser and maybe have a comfortable conversation there and maybe get some camaraderie and help, or
Really
out
does
with friends.
take a village.
That's been curtailed. So
watch out.
I really think it's important, because the numbers are showing that this is going to prove to be an issue, and
Yeah.
there is help out there, and I wanted people to know.
I want to mention quick, Representative Schmidt, before we get to that Massachusetts has the 211 hotline that's sponsored by the United Way. And I call this just to make sure it's still working, it's still relevant, and that someone's there 24 hours a day to answer that phone. So it's literally just 211.
Yep.
You might have to wait a minute or two. It's a 24/7 hotline, and they have everything, as you just mentioned, Representative Fiola, dealing with domestic abuse, addiction issues, homelessness, concerns that people have. Representative Schmidt, what did you want to add on? And then, Mayor, I wanted to ask you about what's being done for the addiction rates in the city. Have we seen lessening? What's going on with that? And in this condition that people are obviously perhaps using more, maybe to dull pain, right? Representative Schmidt?
Well, thank you very much. Perhaps a final word on the budget challenges that we face here in Fall River, which are a reflection of the challenges that the state faces. Senator Rodrick gave a very important webinar last Friday, and he invited the leaders of all 7 communities that he represents, and the delegation, we were all there. We saw Mayor Coogan at his desk, and Senator Rodrick advised us that we have a $40 billion budget here in the state, $40 billion. The experts, and this is not us speaking, these are the economists who know the state inside and out. They're saying, watch out. Your state revenues may be as much as $6 billion below what we thought they were going to be 5 months ago. And
It's staggering, right?
We are required, as the senator said, we're not like the federal government. We can't spend money and print it. We're required to have a balanced budget. And so how we bridge that gap is going to be what we're all going to be wrestling with, and I know the senator spent an awful lot of time on that issue. But I just wanted to mention that that was a very helpful webinar on Friday, and I think we all came away from that very sober. Very sober.
Yeah, it's a lot of money, and it's frightening. So, Mayor Coogan, one of our Facebook watchers right now asked about the addiction rates. What are we seeing? Folks are locked up in their homes. Some surgeries have been delayed, and people may be self-medicating. What are officers and first responders on the streets telling you?
Well, All those things. I had a conversation today with a good friend of mine, Laura Washington. She said the spike in alcohol use is breathtaking right now. Any kind of drug use. To go back to what they were saying about our young people, they're sitting in these homes all day. Some of these kids get out for a free lunch that the schools provide them with at the park. We've served over 200,000. That might be it for the day for them. They're in these environments that just are not good. Is not a good place to raise children. Some of these parents never thought that this would be foisted upon them. They had no problem with dropping the student in the morning at school and picking them up at 8 o'clock at night at the boys' club. Now they're in the house all day with 2 or 3 kids, and they are using drugs, and they are getting high, and they are drinking. And it's going to be a problem that's going to come home to roost after this pandemic goes away. Kids are not getting vaccinated right now. The long-term effect of that, they don't even know yet, because people aren't taking their children to the doctors. They said there's 150,000 cases a month of cancer that's not being diagnosed properly right now. This is going to have a long-term medical and psychological effect on people. This morning on our walk, we were talking about drug use and its explosion in Fall River. We did have a calm start to this. It seemed like things were down, but I have a very bad feeling that this is going to come back stronger than ever shortly.
Well, let's stick on that topic, Mayor Coogan. People who use, homeless people, are generally not, it's fair to say, practicing safe social distancing, wearing their masks like we are. What are we doing to outreach? It was very common to have people walk down and talk one-on-one, close, ask the homeless person, please come with me. What are we trying to do now in place of that?
Well, there are still people doing that in the city, Pam. We're in the process of renovating a old church hall on Bay Street down in Allen's district called Solomon's Porch,
Yeah.
which is near one of our homeless encampment. There's a gentleman there named Father Tom. His motivation in life is to help people that are in this kind of distress. He literally left his job as a Tiverton dispatcher to go down there, and he walks the railroad tracks and brings people in and gets them help. Last week, we were down there looking for a homeless man that was COVID positive.
Yep.
And we got him to St. Anne's, and we got him to the state-sponsored Holiday Inn in Taunton, where he's just recovered, and he called up the nurse's office today. He's back in the city. Homeless services, the federal government has been very generous with us in funding homeless services right now, but it is a very, very shifting population. They move from place to place, and if one person's COVID, you could have a major explosion in a blink and not even know it. And we are doing what I consider a very good job in that area right now, because we work closely with St. Anne's, South Coast, and our homeless advocacy groups in the city. And cross your fingers, we haven't really gotten that explosion some other communities have had.
Right. Here's a tough question, directed over to you, Representative Sylvia. Right in the beginning, boy, did we all receive a lot of criticism that the alcohol and liquor stores remained open, right? We know that if you suddenly cut a user off, they literally can have very, very dangerous, deadly physical withdrawals. Was that part of the decision? And what can you say to people who said, wow, this is silly, I can't get my hair cut, I can't bring my kid to the park, but I can go buy alcohol at the liquor store?
So there's been so much controversy, obviously, and
Yeah.
I don't know anyone who hasn't watched the news, who hasn't heard. I can go to Walmart, I can go to the liquor store, but I can't go to church. I can go to Walmart, but I can't go to the little store on Columbia Street. And she called me. She sells communion dresses and baptism. She has 2 people at a time going into her business with a mask. She can't accept them. So there's been lots of confusion over these locations. I am pleased that, and I don't know anyone who isn't, although there are some not pleased with opening. I think the sooner we open, the sooner our economy improves. The sooner we get kids to school, the sooner we resolve all of the issues that we have, but we have to open safely. We don't make that decision. So many people call my office thinking that I can just call the governor and say, let's open Irene's bridal gowns on, I don't have that kind of authority, and none of us do. We have made suggestions with the reopening board. We have colleagues who are on that team because we either wanted to ensure that certain aspects of the community business opened, that were lagging behind. We heard this with golf courses. We heard this with, right at the outset, we heard it with golf courses. I know I look at the mayor because this was a big issue with locally with a golf course. Golf courses are basically, they're walking around social distance. So this controversy will continue until we're open. But it has to be done safely, and people need to understand that there's a great deal of thought, and many public health and business minds are going in on this. I think that there's something, though, there's so many issues that are involved here, but just to get back to something that was on my mind as the mayor was speaking and we're talking about substance abuse, we're talking about mental health, and one of the things that we first talked about was reaching out to people, our neighbors, especially our elderly neighbors.
Yeah.
And why I'm so glad that Florida Government TV is doing this this evening is because people need to call those people. You don't have to go to their home or knock on their door. You can call them. You know them. They're on your street. If you see them in the yard, ask them if they need something. The lack of communications, the same issue we're having with our children, where they're not communicating with others, the lack of communications with people who are living alone, who are sheltered, is not beneficial to their mental health. It causes depression. And that's one of the things that we're fighting. We want people to communicate easier and better to ensure that they're getting the services that they need. Very important.
Representative Fiola, let's kind of all touch on that, because there have been complaints. You know, my elderly mom can't walk to church, but boy, the man down the street can walk to the liquor store.
Yep. No.
Prior to the opening phases. Complaints about the golf course, right? We're wide open, can't rent the carts unless you have a doctor's notice. So lots of, how are we fielding these questions of feeling, for lack of a better word, it's unfair?
Well, it is unfair, but we haven't had a pandemic before, at least in my lifetime and in most of our lifetimes, and decisions are made. And they're based on the data, and the governor and Secretary Sutters, who's the commander of the COVID Command Center, Commissioner Burrell, and the whole team up there who we have constant contact with, they're charged with making these decisions. And Rep. Sylvia is right. People say, you know, I can go to Walmart, but I can't do this. But they you know, Walmart, you can buy more food and maybe, you know, one store open versus 20 stores. I don't know the exact rationale of the governor and the team, but obviously you could make a case for everybody to be open safely, but that would defeat the behaviors that we need to see. And if you're going into Walmart or you're going into the liquor store, have your mask, social distance, you know, make sure you're not sick, and get through. The liquor stores could be controversial, sure. We had more calls on recreational marijuana stores, the adult-use marijuana stores being open. There was a big concern, why can liquor stores open and we can't open? Well, now, of course, they can. The governor was very, very strong on that. He felt that he would be seeing people being a border community coming from other towns, and it would just cause chaos. So he made the decision. In a pandemic, you have leaders. You elect leaders that hopefully will make the best decisions they feel possible at this time. But I wanted to go back to addiction, because I know that was really important to somebody watching and to somebody on Facebook.
Yep.
A couple of things to follow up on the mayor. He's right. The issue is big. It continues to be big and probably grow a little bit. I talked to Michael Bryant, who heads up the peer-to-peer recovery center. Very, very important that peers get together. They have meetings. You have, you know, the most important thing for many people in recovery are being able to attend their meeting in confidence, go to the AA, go to the NA meeting. It's their lifeline. And now they've had to Zoom it. Well, who knew Zoom, right? Who knew Zoom, how to do Zoom, webinars, Zoom, all that, Google Meets, all these things. So it's been a challenge for people to do that. They don't all have people who are struggling in addiction and struggling day to day, don't necessarily have a smartphone, don't have the iPad. That's been an issue, and so I'm working with him with GPH right now to figure out, you know, is that what you need to, you know, to be a bridge to help your constituents in recovery. The other thing is for our homeless, I got to take my hat off to all the places that the mayor mentioned, but also Hearts of Hope. That is a volunteer group, nonprofit group, and every single Saturday, I think they missed one Saturday during this pandemic. People are gracious and donate food and so forth, and they provide a lunch every Saturday to the homeless population of Fall River. They know where to find them. They go in confidence. They have a couple of meeting spots, and the people who are homeless have come to know them. And so they also provide valuable resource information to them, about the pandemic. They're providing masks to them, expressing how important that is. So we have great people in this community who, government doesn't solve everything. Right? Government doesn't solve, people do. And so we have a great group of helpers in our community that are doing great things. And,
we have seen wonderful people, Representative Fiola, making the masks, donating food, running the food give-outs at the YMCA and other
the
groups.
Boys and Girls Club, the YMCA, the food banks, and again, one of the things on the state level you talk about, I had a conversation with the senator last week, and we all feel strongly, the food we get in our community comes from primarily the Greater Boston Food Bank.
Right.
That is a huge resource to our community. Every one of the shelters, we as a state have to remember, and we have the conversations, how do we help them? And we've done that. We've just given some millions to them, because they in turn give it back to us. Every one of our kids in Fall River has a breakfast, lunch, dinner available to them every single day. Every student in the Fall River Public Schools, every student in Fall River, whether you're a public school or not, has access to 5 locations every day. We do a heck of a job here in Fall River, and we've done collectively, thanks to everyone, we've managed pretty well.
And Grace Gerling, the Director of Recreation,
Another one, yeah.
encourages me and is pretty confident that meal program will continue throughout the summer. Mayor Coogan, this came from email to me earlier. This person says, there is no mask wearing or social distancing going on in my apartment building. My neighbors go out to work every day. They socialize at night in our shared yard and hallway. The doors are not airtight. The common surfaces, handrails, doorknobs, mailboxes have never been cleaned. This person says, I'm following the rules to avoid getting sick, but I feel that others are putting me at risk. Will the governor's masking order be enforced here in Fall River?
Those in someone's house where they live is extremely difficult to enforce a mask order. If someone doesn't, if I lived on a third floor of a 3-decker, I don't think he could enforce it if I took stuff to the basement or I went back upstairs. That's very difficult to enforce for someone else. But the person that wrote the email should make sure that she's constantly washing her hands, she's wearing a mask, avoiding traffic in the hallway, and when she goes out, she'll be protected. If other people are doing reckless things that are exposing them to problems, the state nor the city can enforce things in an apartment house where someone's living. That would really put a great burden on society, and I don't know if I'm comfortable doing that. I am comfortable with people like the individual that wrote this letter, making sure they're doing everything possible to minimize the risk to them and their family. But I really don't think I could tell people, let's go to the 3rd floor and see if they're out on the landing with a mask on. I don't believe we can go that far. And I do feel bad that someone's uncomfortable enough to write a letter, but
Right.
I think that would be one heck of a stretch to go into people's houses to look to enforce a mask ban.
I mean, it is sad that it's become kind of a divisive issue, right? Sometimes, Representative Sylvia?
I was reading a book the other day to the kids for pediatrics, and I said, you can help by being a germ buster.
Yes.
So, as the mayor's saying, people have to take some personal responsibility. There are knuckleheads out there. We see them every day, right? I mean, there's no way to avoid that. How do you stop someone from? I sit in my office on South Main Street. I watch people walking by, standing together, and they don't have a mask on. I'm not going to run out there and make a citizen's arrest. So you can't do that. You hope that people take personal responsibility and realize how serious this is. Now, I know I had a chance to speak a few times. Every time I spoke, I think I mentioned the seriousness that hasn't gone away. For some reason, we think that because the sun came out and there's more leaves on the tree, that this went away. This is as serious as it was. There are people who died today in this Commonwealth. There are people that we know that are going to die. And if we don't take that personal responsibility to wear a mask, to wash our hands, to ensure that at least our family,
Right.
you know, we can talk to our children, we can talk to our grandchildren, to ensure that they're safe. That's our responsibility. We can do that. We much can't control the lady on the 3rd floor, but it's important that we do that. Getting back to something else, food insecurity. Every gateway city, you know, we have so many people call our office for food, and we've been helping them. I noticed recently, in the past couple of weeks, there's been a decline only because people have gotten their checks. Some have been fortunate enough to get unemployment, but we had a lapse of time there, weeks, in some cases, where people weren't getting their unemployment. And there was an awful pressure on us in getting food. We're so fortunate. We're blessed in this community to have those agencies like the food bank, like Citizens for Citizens, who right now are handing out food. So, you know, I think of Helen Rigo and those people in the community. The problem is many of those volunteers at the food bank, are elderly.
Right.
They're at the greatest risk when they're out there volunteering. So they've sort of had to lay back. CFC's been picking up some of that responsibility along with Angels Anonymous and some of those other groups. But our churches have all been playing a role in getting food out to people who are in need. And like every other major city, we have lots of people in our community in need. But we're working together. I think people should continue to make sure that they call our offices. We're available every day. If there's something that they need, I know the mayor's office is available. The Board of Health is available. If there's something that they need, please reach us so we can assist in some way.
We'll be happy to post those numbers
Great.
on Fall River Government Television, on our Facebook page. Just please, I have most of your contacts, but give me a little reminder and I'll make sure that they're up. Senator Rodrigues, talk to us about the first responders. A first responder that I know asked about the stockpile of PPE. They feel that, you know, you're supposed to change your gloves every time you deal with a person on the street. They're nervous, actually, of running out. Should COVID worsen, return at a later time? What can we do to ensure we have enough PPE?
Well, that was a big problem at the beginning of this pandemic that has really come under control. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts, through the Federal CARES Act, we spent $453 million on PPE, buying it from all over the world, primarily China, because that's where it was all made. Delta Airlines has been kind enough, since they're not flying internationally, to actually allow the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to use their hangar at Logan International Airport to stockpile PPE. Our National Guard has been activated, and our National Guard is actively delivering PPE to first responders around the Commonwealth, to hospitals, healthcare systems, those that need PPE. We've seen local manufacturers right here in Fall River step up. I have a mask made by Matuk Industries here in Fall River. That these manufacturers have stepped up to manufacture and to transition their businesses to manufacture masks and gowns and the like. I am confident that we've crossed that bridge. It was a big concern a few weeks ago. Our first responders, our EMS, our police, our firefighters, once again, every day they're putting themselves at risk, servicing and serving the public. And we want to do all we can to give them the tools and the ability to stay safe while they're trying to keep us safe.
Of course. Mayor Coogan, what have you been hearing from the first responders here in the city about their thoughts on how they feel personally safe?
Well, 3 times a week, we have our morning call-in with the chief of police, fire, EMS, and Rick Aguiar. Our stockpile of PPE was running around 30 days for a long time. Now it's up to 60. As Carol said, we have a number of local companies, and Alan's kicking in right now. I picked up last week with Carol up at Clearview. We got 5,000 masks that are in our basement right now. We picked up from Bolger and Hearn, another Florida company, 30 gallons of hand sanitizer that's in our basement. When this first broke, we were looking for masks under beds and stuff. We needed them so bad.
Right,
But
right.
I think now, as the senator said, I think we got to jump on it, and we have a handle on it right now. And I think not only do we have the materials, but we know where to get them. We see a pathway out of this. So I think right now in Fall River, we're in pretty good shape. We're still missing handy wipes. We like those, but we can't get enough of them. But they'll come around shortly. I see stockpiles going up and up and up. So the city's in good shape as far as PPE right now.
Okay. Representative Schmidt, what are you saying? What are your constituents saying as far as opening churches, the liquor store? I want to get your thoughts.
Sure, and of course, there has been a tremendous amount of concern, frustration about getting back to church, about being able to get into the stores, about being able to get into the restaurants. My gosh, restaurants are such an important part of the employment here in Fall River, and it's something we take such great pride in. And by the way, hearing Senator Rodrick mention his conversation with his colleague, Senator from North End, Senator Boncourt, who was so brave as to mention that the North End is the restaurant capital of the Commonwealth, and I think we all down here in Fall River would probably like to take an issue with that. We think we have a pretty extraordinary range. My friend Billy Desmarais always says that a trip to Fall River is like a trip around Europe, except you don't have to get out of your car, because you have Azorean food, you have Portuguese cuisine, you have Polish, you have Cambodian, you have Chinese, on and on and on. It's something we take very seriously here in Fall River, and I think we've all felt very frustrated.
I miss it.
We
Yeah.
we miss
Right?
it. We
Somehow
miss it.
takeout just isn't the same, and you don't bump into the folks you see.
Yeah, and we've all tried the best we can to
Yes,
support
yes.
Our friends at the various restaurants by ordering takeout as much as we can. But, you know, there's something about the conviviality of a restaurant that makes the food taste very special. Mm-hmm. And we all want to get back to that. And we hope that, and of course, restaurants were not opened in phase 1. We hope that in phase 2, the next phase, that they will be part of that. It'll certainly be a different atmosphere in the restaurants, but at least we'll be able to get back into them. Mm-hmm. And we just mentioned to everybody who's watching, please, for the next 3 or 4 weeks, continue to support our restaurants. Continue to order takeout as much as you can, and look forward to the day when we're all back together again in our favorite restaurants.
Representative Sylvia, do you think that Fall River's done a good job getting this information out to folks where English is not their first language?
I do. You know, there are fewer and fewer people who speak and understand just Portuguese, and perhaps there's more of a problem in the Spanish community than there is. I think we've done a pretty good job. I think not only the city, but the churches have done that as well, in those smaller communities of folks, to make them aware of what's going on. They have their sources of radio, and I know WHTB and Spanish radio have done the same thing in their communities to try to get that word out. We would like to do that better. I know that the governor has materials that are printed in several languages. Getting that information out is not always the easiest thing to do. We think it is because we're immersed in that. You know, we watch TV, we listen to radio. Look, we're doing this show on cable, but we hope that. I'd like to think that there's 60,000 people are watching us like right now, but we know that's not true. But there has to be a way to get, and that's why I'm saying it's important for people to communicate with each other, their neighbors, to talk, to speak on the phone, and let them know what's going on in our community regarding food insecurity, regarding going back to school, the concerns that we all have about those precautions of washing hands and wearing masks and doing those things, because there's a population out there that does not hear that enough. And could be some of the reason why we see people riding around, walking down the street without a mask. When this first started a couple of weeks, I was upset when somebody come walking over to me, didn't have a mask on at all. And I'd go like, oh my God, stay away from me.
It's awkward in a way, right? You
Yeah,
want to
it's
protect
so-
yourself. I'm concerned about my elderly mother
Yeah,
and mother-in-law, but
Yeah.
at the same time, I've known you all so long that it
know.
seems funny to suddenly, ooh,
I know,
right,
but
let's
we
keep
see
a
that-
distance.
We
So
see that more and more, especially
Yeah.
in like Stop and Shop and some of the
Right,
market
right.
basket. People will approach you and not even think about it. Not so much now. I think we're all pretty much getting used to wearing masks. Many stores now, and I'm happy to see that, they'll have a sign on the door. It'll say, no mask, no service.
right.
Makes a lot of sense to me. And these are new ways that we're adapting. And if there's a new normal coming in phase 4, whatever that new normal is, I hate to talk about it, but it's going to be those kinds of signs that say, wear a mask or you can't come in.
Right.
Wear shoes or you can't walk in. We saw that before in the summertime. We see, make sure
Shirt and shoes.
Yeah, shirt and shoes.
Mayor Coogan, now that it is getting warmer, people are enjoying being outside more and more, and that's a good thing. But you mentioned that the basketball hoops will go back up, and everyone received a lot of flack and complaints when the basketball hoops came down. What are you hoping to kind of unveil in the summer to keep folks busy? I'm even envisioning, Representative Fiola, some AA meetings outdoors, right, with social distancing. What can we expect for recreation?
It's very, very difficult. We're still looking at whether our youth sports leagues, Little League, all those leagues get rolling again, softball for the girls. I don't know. I was told today that we've opened up the tennis courts. We're starting to put the nets back up and get that going, because again, that's a very individual sport, and even if you're playing partners or teams, it's still pretty spread out. Basketball is a high-contact sport where they're on top of each other, and we saw that way too much early in this pandemic, so we had to close them down to keep everybody safe. But I'm at the point now where I do believe people's mental health is as important as COVID-19. You have to give our young people a chance to bomb around with their friends, shoot hoops, take a bike ride, go for a walk, go for a swim. I don't think it's going to be good for Fall River long term or for the state long term if we just tell everybody to, take a walk, get some fresh air, but don't play any competitive sports. It's a tremendous outlet for our kids. Go to the boys' club and the kids are this big and they're already running around shooting hoops and trying to compete, and it makes them a better person. I think competition and athletics is good for our kids. That being said, the downside is, God forbid one of the kids on the court is sick or has COVID. We don't need that either, but there is a trade-off with everything we're doing. Every one of these phases has trade-offs, and I just think maybe around June 8th or 10th, it's time to open the courts up and let kids shoot some hoops and see how it goes.
Right, again, the fear is bringing that home to the
Absolutely.
elders and those not well. I
Absolutely.
mean, kids always think they're kind of,
Immune, yeah.
exactly, without harm at all. Senator Rodrick, do you think we'll ever see statewide testing? Is that going to come? I mean, we've seen so many, places open up just here in Fall River and really open, and is that going to come?
Slowly, yes. Once again, as with the PPE early on in the pandemic, where there wasn't enough supply of PPE, there were not enough supply of testing kits. We've turned that corner also. Massachusetts has probably, if not the highest, one of the highest testing per capita protocols now.
Fifth,
Are we?
Yeah.
Yeah, we are. So Governor Baker's all about testing and tracing. He's hired companies to actually trace when someone has come down with COVID-19 to try to trace everyone that they've come in contact with. to try to control the spread of the virus. So I think testing is just going to be more and more prevalent as time goes on.
I'm sorry, Viola?
Yep.
No. A little bit about privacy. People have said, you know, I'm not comfortable walking into the airport and my temperature is going to show up on the virtual screen, or texts, right, that might identify me as having been at a restaurant and now I may have come in contact with COVID. Any thoughts on that, on protecting privacy? You did touch on that before, Mayor Coogan, about protecting privacy, but still ensuring safety.
We've
Raphael?
been hearing a lot of Google and Facebook and all these apps that are
Yes.
designed to do that, right? I think at this point it's optional, as I understand it. There are people who can choose to be contact traced that way or not. You know, a lot of people feel very strongly they don't want anybody to know where they've been. With this disease, it's all about contact tracing. That's how we get to the root of it. Where, you know, what they call you. There's a whole call center set up in Boston and from people's homes. As a matter of fact, they're still hiring people to do these jobs. And if you can go on the mass.gov website, contact tracing, and you'll see that they're still looking for people to make those calls to those who've tested positive. Where have you been? Who have you been with? It's self-disclosure. It's up to you to tell people that if you
Right.
choose to. You know, this has forever been a constitutional question of privacy. You mentioned the meetings, maybe an outdoor AA meeting. It crossed my mind as well, but in speaking with Michael, confidentiality is blown.
Yes.
You need to be in a more private setting. So you need to be in groups. You need to be in groups and small groups. And they're really hoping to get that opened up soon as part of the reopening, because you want to be able to have 10 people, maybe those who don't have the ability to have the devices to go on to a meeting. But you know, privacy is a big issue, and you know, this pandemic has truly thrown everything out the window. I mean, I have a wedding planned this summer. My wedding. I'm married,
yes,
of course,
I saw
but
that.
my daughter. We planned it for 2 years. I'm not alone. She's not alone. That's the way. I
Right.
mean, everything had to change.
I have a senior, you know, graduating
College,
in
high
some
school,
way.
High
Mayor
school
Coogan.
graduates. Look at what happened in this community.
Yeah.
The response for our seniors. I mean, and it isn't even over yet. We got the signs, and they're feeling the love, and they're going to be more resilient as a result of this, I think, in the long run. But they were pretty much robbed of their senior year in high school, which is probably the most fun I ever had back then, looking back as a hilltopper. But so, you know, Pam, everything is new. Everything is to be looked at and challenged and get input. It's a difficult time.
Frightening. Representative Schmidt, you have follow-up?
I do. Well, a related subject, Pam, and that is the census.
Good one.
This is, every 10 years, we take a census, and everybody has to be counted. Why is it important? I heard it said just a couple of weeks ago, if you don't respond to the census, you will be costing Fall River $2,500 a year in federal and state funds for the next 10 years. You'll be costing Fall River $25,000 over the next decade. By now, if this had been a normal year, folks would have been out going door to door, checking on the people who haven't already self-responded. Of course, the pandemic threw that all in a cocked hat, and we don't know when folks will be able to get out going door to door. So it's so important for people to self-respond to the census. And please keep in mind, on the subject of privacy, that your responses are never trailed back to you. They're completely confidential. So everybody in the community, particularly those who might fear in some way responding to the government, please know it's absolutely critical, and its privacy is guaranteed. Thanks for letting me get a little
That,
Oh, that's-
promotion on the
That's a
census.
good one, the census, absolutely. Fall Government Television has worked on some public service announcements with the election officer to get people to respond to the census. Let's talk about social media, maybe in closing. Any other ideas? You know, there's so much out there. I like to think we're doing good, but there's also these myths and these hoax and these frightening videos that people, I think, feel that they don't even know where to go for answers, right? Any thoughts on that, Senator Rodrick? What's a trustworthy source?
Probably not Facebook. You're looking at 4 or 5 individuals right here who are in constant contact and communication with our constituents,
Yeah.
constantly answering calls, receiving texts and messages. We rely on us. We will give you straight, honest answers. I always said if I had a nickel for every rumor, I'd be a millionaire.
Sure.
That I've heard, because there are lots of rumors, there are lots of innuendos. We're here, that's why we're here tonight, that's why we're participating, and why we're so appreciative of Fall River Government TV for providing this opportunity, because we want to disseminate the truth and real, true information.
Okay. Representative Sylvia?
You know, we are all also very involved with social media.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have a strong Facebook presence, and that's one of the ways we reach our constituents, to let people know that we're doing something. You see, if you didn't do that, they would say, "Where's he been? Where has she been?" So now they can't say that because they know where I am, even during a pandemic. I'm in my office, or I'm at the cemetery with Rep. Schmidt, or I'm with Senator Rodrick, trying to get something done to help the community in some way. So it's important that we let people know, but it's also important that people get the truth. I'll mention it again because our offices, and every one of our offices, are available. People have a question, please call us.
Right.
We want to lead people in the right direction. The mayor's office is available every day. I know sometimes when I'm stuck, I call the mayor, as I did today, to want to know a particular answer to a question or to try to get that answer. So that's the best source of information, is to be able to go to us, or as Rep. Viola mentioned, every day we're on a number of conference calls, Zoom calls. I didn't even know what Zoom was 2 months ago.
I think it used to be a
and I-
show in the 70s, right?
Two things have happened to me. I become an expert in Zoom, and I also, my culinary skills have improved greatly.
Okay,
So
yeah.
I'm amazed by how well I can cook. But
I think we've adapted, right?
Yes,
Folks have
it's
adapted, and of
amazing.
course, our sympathies to the folks that, Sarah LaPointe in the mayor's office does a wonderful job updating us every single day with the statistics and what we're seeing in Fall River. It's sobering, and
And our staffs as well. You know, we
Absolutely.
say, we did this, I did. When I say we, it's my chief of staff and my aide, my legislative aide, that are making those calls, that are reaching out to unemployment and reaching out to constituents about their mother and their cousin in a nursing home, trying to resolve some of those issues, health-related issues. So many of those issues that sound minute to some of us, but they're major to those
Sure.
individuals who are calling us. And so it's very important that we have the staff that we have to be able to get that done in a very sensitive way.
okay. Representative Viola, you just touched on it. You know, yeah, if you've lost someone, wow, that pretty much puts graduation a little bit lower down, right? But such a huge disappointment for folks who had summer plans for weddings or graduation. What can you say to ease the pain of some of the young people?
I don't think you can. I think you have to just, at some point, it has evolved. We haven't known since March 20th. It's changed every week. So people had to, they thought they might have a postponement, or they thought they might have another week and they could just change things. They thought they could have 200 people, then they could only have 10. I mean, it's changed so much. But I think everybody's been so resilient. And, picking up on what the senator and rep said, our offices have fielded so many hundreds of calls, texts, emails, messages. It's incredible. And I think those who are watching tonight, I think if you've had an experience with our office, I think you'll agree that if you've had a problem, we're all there to help. I would also like to suggest that in addition to calling us, if you're at home and you do happen to have a laptop or a computer, the mass.gov website has a COVID link. It's very simple, and the information is all there. Every death, every hospitalization, the statistics about reopening, every phase of the reopening. What do you do as an employer if you are opening? What are your obligations? What do you have to display in your business? What are the sanitation requirements? Everything is there. And resources. I've gotten a lot of calls. It's transitioned from unemployment to businesses calling me saying, now I'm going to be opening and I need PPE equipment. Where do I get it? And it's one thing to call Clearview in the industrial park or Matuk or Merrow locally, and they are just, stepping up big time. But there's links on that website. If you are an employer and you want gowns, it's a whole list of providers for gowns, masks, shields, gloves, whatever it is. It's all on that website. So I really offer that up as a great tool. But call one of us. Mm-hmm. It's just important that you get the answers, and all of us will get you the answers. As the senator said in the beginning, you may not like, we've had a few people that we couldn't get them what they had hoped to get in terms of unemployment, but we got them the answer, and we got them why. So reach out. We're here. We hope we've earned your trust during this time because we want to help.
Well, those 90 minutes went by pretty fast. Mayor Coogan, we're going to let you wrap it up, and people are talking about the Durfee graduation and the Durfee prom. We know the governor's orders is that if anything happens kind of live in person, it has to happen after mid-July. Right. What's going to happen with Durfee?
Right now, they're polling the students. I think they had about 250 votes this afternoon to get what they would rather do. Would they want to do a virtual graduation on the regularly scheduled day early in June, or would they want to hold off and go till July?
Yeah.
I don't know what the results are going to be. I think they'll know tomorrow, and we'll do whatever. Those kids have been shunted left, as I say, because they didn't get a fair deal. So we'll do something good for them coming down the stretch. Just watch. I did want to talk briefly about Facebook for a second, though. All of us do use social media as a means to communicate, but you have to be very cautious when you stick your feet in the water there, because there are people out there that'll say the most outrageous things. They're not honorable people. They don't conduct themselves in the public arena. We all go on Facebook, but it's not because no one knows us. They all know who we are. We're all out there. Pretty much, if you ran for office in Fall River, your life's an open book, and people have an idea of who you are. But these people, they run into the shadows, and they type something bad about any one of us. And it's not the way to conduct yourself. It's not going to bother me because I worked at Durfee, so I'm used to rocking and rolling. But I really wish, for their sake and for the sake of the city, we could get a better climate going with some of the things that are said about our elected officials, whether they're local, state, or federal, and let's conduct ourselves at a better standard. I think if we come out of the pandemic with that, it might be a plus down the road. I do want to thank everybody for watching tonight, and these guys are all partners in whatever they can do to make the city a better place to live. This isn't like, I'll call Carol, or Mike will call me, or I'll call Alan. It's not like that. It's one unit working together to try to do what's best for the city, and that's the way we're going to keep it. The city comes first, and the rest of our little areas we work on at our own pace. But when things go to the city of Fall River, that's where we're going to help. But I would like Representative Schmidt to get a chance to say something before we go, Pam, please.
So we'll
Sorry.
have a minute to go. Representative Schmidt, try to give everybody a quick minute. Your closing thoughts.
Thank you very much. I'm just reflecting on the fact that in a normal year, 2 days ago, we would have all been at Espirito Santo procession. In a couple of weeks, we would be at St. Anthony's of Padua, liberal there at the head, and of course, and on and on and on. And we so miss that. And we just reach out and say to every one of our constituents, Don't give up hope. Never underestimate the American spirit, and God bless.
Okay.
No?
Yes.
Thank you.
Close.
No?
Anyone else? Quick closing?
Thank you, Pam.
Okay, I think that's it. I want to remind everyone of the Massachusetts 211 hotline. That's 24/7 to talk about unemployment benefits, care. We also talked about danger issues, addiction. All can be addressed at that 211. And Mayor Coogan has been kind enough to share with us his phone number, 508-324-2600, or you can reach the mayor at fallriverma.org. And again, Fall River Government Television thanks all of you folks for taking part in this, and we hope that everyone at home, and we wish you good health to you and your loved ones. Thank you. We hope that this forum has been helpful.
Very nice.
Good night.
Very much,
Thank you.
Pam.
Thanks, Pam.